Hi everybody and welcome to another tips and tricks video for Tekla PowerFab. My name is Dan Lopez. In today's video we are going to talk about advanced bill of material workflow, which is a pretty common support questions topic, and it is also a very helpful and powerful tool that many companies use to procure their materials, either because they buy steel from mills or because they probably have some materials that are pretty hard to find with the local vendors as their normal stock, or also because by procuring this material in an advanced way, they can get less scrap percentage and begin the fabrication as soon as they have shop drawings approved. So anyway, what I will try to show today will be the typical workflow from an ABM. Quick disclosure here, some companies like to do this with some slight variations. I will try to talk about these variations through the process. So as I mentioned before, an ABM is an actual advanced bill of material, but a bigger definition for that will be it is basically a list of materials needed for the project, where you already have a length and a size, which should be pretty close to the final one. Each piece has a non-definitive mark on them, so that non-definitive mark, it's called preliminary mark in Tekla, and that will remain in the background even when the final mark is assigned, and it's totally different to this one. Um, some other software they call it ID, some other software use like the page and item number for that reference number, and in the Tekla structures world is the preliminary mark. Also, an AVM can be received by sequences or a particular area, but typically no revisions are needed in an AVM. And that is because if there is a change of an AVM, in most of the cases should be a change order, right? Which is totally separated process from this. And because really at the point of an AVM, the purpose of getting an ABM is buy the material as soon as possible, but in a safe way. So if you know in advance that there will be changes on material sizes, for example, it's probably better to just wait till you know the final information and then generate the ABM. Right on? So before we begin, let me show you real quick where the preliminary mark is coming from, because in the past I have seen several cases where some people believe that the actual mark is the reference number, and it's a different thing. So let's jump into that real quick. So as we can see in these pieces, I have already assigned a mark for those parts. You can see that, for example, this beam is the B23. Uh, that's not my reference number. That's where a lot of people get confused about it. They think that they have their first marking process done and that will be the reference number for the AVM, and that's not the case. We want to actually have that mark under the preliminary number attribute here, so we can make sure that that will not get lost when we then renumber the model after the detailing process. So anyway, I'm not here really to teach you how to do that, right? But it's really super simple. So I'll just go ahead and select the whole set of pieces here and just save my preliminary numbers. And that's done. It's really a simple process. So that means that if I go to that beam again and check the attributes, now I should have the actual preliminary mark set here as B23. So that will be remaining in there as far as I don't change it and in this particular field, right? Even if the mark change, that will be always the same in here. So that's what we want to have at this point. Okay, and just remember that this process cannot be done with the Tekla APN modular version of the license, right? Because that's not designed to create marks on the pieces. So you will need to do it from a different Tekla structures license. Anyway, so let me go ahead and export that real quick so we can begin in EPM with the workflow. So I'll just export this as a keys file. There you go. I'll just call this an AVM, and I will create it for all of the pieces. And that's done. So let me just go ahead and import this in Tekla EPM now. Okay, so let me pull Tekla EPM here and let's go with the import process, which again, pretty much all the import files process are done through file import. I'll say 90 something percent it's done through that menu. So I'll go and select combining in this case, and I will actually use a keys file for that. So let me find that file that I just created, which will be on the folder model of my project. And that's model, it's called ABM. So there you go. And here's my file. I import that. This is very important too. The job number for the combining job, it's usually better if you name it exactly the same as the production control job, because in that way you don't have to do extra steps later, editing the material while it's on the requisition or stuff. It will be used from the beginning, correspond to that job number. So I'll go ahead and use my job number exactly the same that I plan to use for production control. This is one of the variations that I was talking about. Some companies, they like to bring, like if this were the sequence one of the project, they will just import that and call it 2020-3 SIG1. And then they will call the same, but using SIG2 for the next part of the project. That's okay if you want to do it in that way. But then you will need to edit the job number in the requisition stage to make sure that you have all those pieces assigned to the actual correct right number, because otherwise in the inventory they pertain to a different job than the production control job. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and call this an AVM and save it. And everything, it was pretty straightforward, so I can go ahead and open my combining module. And there is, so those are all the pieces that I bring from the AVM. As you can see that the screen is pretty similar to production control and estimating, really. We have the navigation tree where we have a quick filter to the different shapes. I can go by dimensions also and see all the 10 by 49, for example, the 10 by 54 that I have for the project, all the HSS, all the 8 by 24s. You can get different information from these different sizes. I'll just go ahead and see the main screen of this. Now, as you can see here also, nothing of this is allocated yet, right? Because I just imported. So that's what we are going to do next. I'll go to my combining pull down menu and send this to the purchasing module. Load the material into a requisition because that's where I prefer to run my combines. I'll go ahead and create a new one. I'll call this an AVM just to make sure that I don't get confused through the video. Save this. Okay. And at this point, you can still decide, right? If you just want to send the HSS, if you just want to send certain sizes of beam, is not all need to be actually gathered from an AVM. Like I could just go to the white flanges and just take some of the sizes, like the most heavy ones or the ones that I know it will be more difficult to find with my local vendor and every moment of time. So you can take that decision if you want. For the purpose of this video, I will just send the whole thing that I have in here. So, okay, import that, and that should send all to the actual requisition. And you can see now here that everything is being allocated now. So, and now it's all waiting in the purchasing module for me. So let me close this and let's go to requisitions now. So that's my ABM requisition, and this is where we are going to work next. So I will not go into a lot of details about the combining process and the pricing process and all that, because that will take me a little while. So I'll just go ahead and run this real quick to show the workflow. I'll just run a mold, and for this example, I will not also use my inventory at all. I'll just go straight from the warehouse database. And in the future, I can do a separate video where you can even compare those different options. But for now, I'll just go ahead and combine with this. And this is a medium-sized list of material, but this is usually pretty fast. So we should be all right in a couple of seconds. This should be all done if we are lucky. Uh, there you go. It's coming now. So it's all combined. You can see here that overall it's at 2.18% of scrap, which is pretty good. Obviously, some sizes have more scrap than others. But as an overall, while cost represent, this is the scrap percentage that we have for these sizes. So I will not make changes. As I said, I could show you in a separate video some of the tools that are available in this function. For now, I'll just go ahead and think that it's all right, that I will buy this material as it is and save my displayed results. I will also assume that I get already prices from my vendors, etc. And I will just go ahead and buy this material. And let's assume also that we are buying all this from one vendor, so we can just create a quick purchase order for all this. So let me just load this material into a new purchase order. Uh, I will not put a lot of details in here, just my vendor and the normal ship to bill to it's there. So I'll just go ahead and set that this is my ABM just to have that note in there. And then I'll just go ahead and save this and okay. I will not set filters. As I mentioned, I am buying the whole set of materials from this guy, and I'll just click OK, and this list of materials should be all gone. So I have everything under the requisition. I'm sorry, about under the purchase order, and at this point we do not need to keep going to show you the workflow that I want to show you, right? You could be receiving the material partially or completely. It doesn't really matter at this point. What matters is we bring the material based on an ABM list. So going back to Tekla structures, I may need to go front in time and finish these model connections and drawings to kind of finish to show you the process. So let me do that real quick. Stay with me for a second and let's finish this. All right, that was done. So I have everything detailed, and I have actually drawings print, CNC created, and I also export the Tekla APM plugin file. Now, before we go and import the XML, and to prove kind of my point, let's take a look. Hopefully this actually changed to prove the point that I want to show you. Well, this part is the one that we checked before, right? That it was B23. So if I check this part right now, that actually is the final mark for that assembly. It's a B125. And even that mark change, if I check on the attributes, let's see, it's coming. There you go. So now you can see that we still have the B23 here. So that's what will be our reference number. That's the mark that we use to buy that material, and that is what will allow us to create that link between the purchase order and what it was the reference number. So without saying any more, let me go jump again into Tekla APM and import this file into production control. I think this is one. Yep. So that's the file. I will go ahead and import that. And let me just load the project from project management. I have it already there. So that's my release number one. Save this. Yeah, I'll use the map that I have already preset up to make this faster. Uh, all the CNC under the current job number that I have created. I may have missed some CNC files because I didn't bring the angle ones, and also some drawings, a few maybe, but that's not relevant for the AVM workflow at this point. So hopefully this goes pretty fast, and let us keep going. And well, what this import finish, just comment that any questions that you have related to this process, feel free to contact the help desk area, or you can email me directly and we can talk about it. If you have any other different points of view, or if you use something different because a particular situation, just let us know and we'll try to help you with that. So right, I was missing some drawings as I mentioned, and 10 CNC files. Okay, no problem. So I have that import finish, and let me just go to production control and open the job. So this is what is really relevant about this. You can see here, like this piece, for example, it has the mark A1 and the reference number, it was the same, right? But if I go down where the beams, where most of the variation actually happens, you will notice that some of the beams will have differences between the actual AVN mark and the main mark. Some of them will remain the same, but some others not. You will see here, like we have this C18 Yeah, that's the main mark, and I still it was my C4 reference number, right? Now at this point, you can see here that this is not linked to inventory based on my display, or also here on the bottom right corner, it has not links at all, right? So before to even buy something, since I get this material from an actual ABM, what I will go ahead and do is just go ahead and link this material. And so I will not set any filters. You could filter like just the columns or the beams or just a particular sequence. I'll just go ahead and link the whole thing. So this tries to find as much material as we have bought before. I will just go and look into my inventory and find the reference number, and based on that and the job number, we'll create the link between those pieces that we buy before. So there you go. I will just send the rest of the materials to requisition. At this point, you can just ignore it, but I'll just go ahead and send it to a requisition to keep going later, buying all the small plates and angles and all the connections material that I have. So I'll just go ahead and click OK. And now notice here, I have already a 1 in the quantity link to inventory also here on the bottom right. So that means that it found a piece for that particular beam. And as you can see, pretty much that's the case for any main member because we actually got them from the ABM list. So they are now part of my purchase order or my stock. All right. So one last thing, real quick. Some people before to create that link between the AVM material and the production control job, they would like to compare, just to look for critical differences. So you have the option to compare that against the AVM, set parameters to identify, and in that case, use the reference numbers that actually had huge differences. You will be able to see the combining length and the actual production control length, and you can get reports about linear fits in each case. All right. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact the help desk area. And thank you for watching.